Okay, so it's time for the weekly picture kind of videos that I'm doing. Because uh, some of these sheets don't have more than one creature on them, I'm going to do two pictures if they've only got one creature on each. And we've got a visitor from the cat today. um, so yeah, today I'm going to do two different creatures. Now there's not much to say about one of them because they're fairly new, whereas another one is based on a very old design. So we'll start with the Bombay, and it's like a tortoise crossed with an ankylosaur. It's got this really sharp like beak on the lower jaw, which is how it forages for its roots and things because this is a herbivore. Now the reverse of most of these pictures is a full body female with a bust of a male, whereas normal ones will have a full body male and a bust female. But these were the last ones. It's on the same side as the Fufei. These last few pictures I thought I'll do a reverse. I'll do full body female with a bust of a male. So yeah, there's not much to say about these guys. They're found, like the Fufei, in places that are hot climates or warm enough to sustain them, so they're not really found absolutely everywhere, so they're not really classed as a migratory animal, they're just found in quite a lot of places. Now this one is based on a picture I drew 10 years ago, which was a redraw of a picture I drew another 10 years ago. So this picture is based off a nearly 20-year-old design, which we'll show because it looks like something was designed by a 9-year-old, which is the Sekoda. And it's a hare that has dragon characteristics. Now, the old design that pretty much had the body of a dragon with these feathery wings, long rabbit-like ears, and a long I can't remember the name of the genus, but that kind of rodent, kind of long snout, and it had this unicorn horn going on. And the redesign I did 10 years ago didn't change much, so the only thing that changed was obviously it was the updated style. So when I came to this one, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a change to its design. So what I did was, obviously I stuck with most of the key features so that it looked akin to the original, but I made the wings smaller, so this one can only glide, it can't actually fly, and it uses it to make it jump extremely high rather than to, fly anywhere. And it also has more of a rabbit-like body, or a hare in some cases, because it's quite a large animal. It's a little bit larger than a hare. So, and it has the dragon-like tail still, but whilst it looks like it has feathers on its tail, it is just elongated pieces of fur. And the wings, again, whilst it may look like they're feathers, they are actually supposed to be quite furry in texture. I mean, they have the same properties as a feather, but they are a type of fur, which is another reason why this creature can't actually fly. It just has extremely good jumping abilities, thanks to the use of those wings, and some like gliding abilities. So this one doesn't have another drawing on it, as you may have noticed, and that's because both genders are exactly the same. They are impossible to tell apart, other than the aforementioned like gender features, but the body-wise they both look exactly the same. Maybe the males are a little bit larger. I'm not entirely sure because these creatures they haven't appeared much in the dreams that that these designs are based around. The Idris planet, the planet of the Feles, the Jinnimaru and stuff. If you're not familiar with those, I briefly describe it in last week's video, but full details on the lore basis that these are from is all available on my website. But basically, these guys, they're found absolutely everywhere because they are fur. animals. You know, the animals, the mammals that have so they can be found in extreme cold where their bodies will be very fluffy, and they're found in places like deserts as well where their fur will be a little bit thinner than what's on display here. Now, because these creatures were quite plain, quite simple, even though this one has a lot more history behind the design, I'm going to show one more picture, and that's one that I did recently, which is a landscape. And I have more of these to come. Now, this is the first one I finished. These take a lot longer to complete, so don't expect to see them on my Twitter feed as often as the creature ones and the plant ones were. There will be more creatures and plants done in the future, but for now, I'm moving on to landscapes and then architecture. So this is the landscape that I did recently. It is it's a Bob Ross inspired one, as in a lot of the techniques I used were similar to the techniques Bob Ross used for painting, but these were done with markers and white acrylic pens. So it goes to show some of the techniques that are done in normal painting can translate into marker pens as well. It just depends on the type of paper you're using and the type of markers you're using, and, you know, just modifying the techniques slightly. I mean, one day, maybe, when I'm a bit more confident, I will show how I do one of these landscapes using those Bob Ross techniques. But for now, we're just describing what's going on with these pictures. Now, I'm still working on doing clouds with the marker pens, so we'll look that over later. But this is a typical grassland to taiga biome that you'll find on Idris. Their mountains do vary, but this was more based around like the very sharp, steep cliff faces that you find in Yosemite. If you're familiar with, like, I think they call it Half Dome. I mean, we visited Yosemite a few times, and I fell in love with the place. So it's pretty easy to see how those visits to Yosemite translated into my dreams and then wound up on paper like this. So they have very steep peaks. There are some other mountain biomes that are a little bit tamer, so they're easier to scale. These are just very extreme. They would be found on the very tighter bands, because there's a band that runs across Idris, a whole mountain range, a bit like the Alps, but it's to the extreme. It runs across the whole planet other than one little chunk where an island breaks, and then you don't have any. So in the steepest parts where there's more of them, the peaks are high and very, very difficult to navigate, to get around. Not much foliage grows on them. So in this typical area, we have a city or a town down here at the foot of the mountains bordering onto the taiga biomes, and then you have your grasslands down here with farmland running into the city area. So it's just a typical example of how one of the biomes, when they clash together, will generally look. The grasslands are quite boring, to be honest, because there's not much that goes on with them. They're just used for generic farming, and if, to be honest, a lot of what I was seeing in the dreams of Idris's grasslands, they're very similar to the moors of Yorkshire and the dales of Yorkshire as well, and a couple areas kind of looked a bit like the Highlands as they were roaming up into the mountain regions. But overall, if you just want a general idea of how the grasslands look on Idris, just look at places like Scotland, Yorkshire, and even Cumbria. Those areas are very, very much like how the grasslands of Idris looks. So I've rambled enough. That's going to be enough pictures for this week. Next week I will do 2 more creatures, and if I have done another landscape by then, which I doubt by then, we can add that to the end. But for now, that's going to do. And as a little status update for the website, I've just got one more G Fuel flavour to review before I will be open to requests again for sampling different flavours. But that's it really at the moment, because I still don't have access to my computer. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at the new pictures, and if you do have any questions about what materials I use, or any of the techniques that I've used, please feel free to drop me a question, and when I get access to the computer next, I'll be sure to answer them. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next week.